Hi everyone, I'm Mary Drapshow and I want to welcome you to the Library Corner. Today we're in the Library Corner at Strong Vincent High School, 9 through 12 school in the City School District, and this is the library. And as always, we start our show with a picture book, and so today I'm going, because it's so cold outside, it's freezing, the wind is blowing, the snow is blowing, and so I thought that I would read The Mitten by Jan Brett. It's a Ukrainian folktale that was adapted and illustrated by Jan Brett. And I want you to pay very careful attention to the illustrations in the book because Jan Brett has done a wonderful job illustrating this book, but there's also something called foreshadowing in this book, and we're going to talk about it when we get done. So let's read The Mitten, by a Ukrainian folktale by Jan Brett. Once there was a boy named Nicky who wanted his new mittens made from wool, as white as snow. And as you can see, there are pictures along the sides. At first, his grandmother, Baba, did not want to knit white mittens. If you drop one of them in the snow, she warned, you'll never find it. But Nicky wanted snow white mittens, and finally Baba made them. After she finished, she said, when you come home, first I will look to see if you are safe and sound, but then I will look to see if you still have your snow white mittens. So off Nicky went, and it wasn't long until one of his new mittens dropped in the snow and was left behind. A mole, tired from tunneling along, discovered the mitten and burrowed inside. It was cozy and warm and just the right size, so he decided to stay. A snowshoe rabbit came hopping by. He stopped for a moment to admire his winter coat. It was then that he saw the mitten, and he wiggled in, feet first. The mole didn't think there was room for both of them, but when he saw the rabbit's big kickers, he moved over. Next, a hedgehog came snuffling along. Having spent the day looking under wet leaves for things to eat, he decided to move into the mitten and warm himself. The mole and the rabbit were bumped and jostled, but not being ones to argue with someone covered with prickles, they made room. As soon as the hedgehog disappeared into the mitten, a big owl, attracted by the commotion, swooped down. Then when he decided to move in also, the mole, the rabbit, and the hedgehog grumbled. But when they saw the owl's glinty talons, they quickly let him in. Up through the snow appeared a badger. He eyed the mitten and began to climb in. The mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, and the owl were not pleased. There was no room left, but when they saw his diggers, they gave him the thumb. It started snowing, but the animals were snug in the mitten. A waft of warm steam rose in the air, and a fox trotting by stopped to investigate. Just the sight of the cozy mitten made him feel drowsy. The fox poked his muzzle in. When the mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, the owl, and the badger saw his shiny teeth, they gave the fox lots of room. A great bear lumbered by. He spied the mitten all plumped up. Not being one to be left out in the cold, he began to nose his way in. The animals were packed in as tightly as could be, but what animal would argue with a bear? The mitten swelled and stretched. It was pulled and bulged, too many times its size. But Baba's good knitting held fast. Along came a meadow mouse, no bigger than an acorn. She wriggled into the one space left and made herself comfortable on top of the great bear's nose. The bear, tickled by the mouse's whiskers, gave an enormous sneeze. Achoo! The force of the sneeze shot the mitten up into the sky and scattered the mitten in all directions. On his way home, Nicky saw a white shape in the distance. It was the lost mitten silhouetted against the blue sky. As he ran to catch his snow-white mitten, he saw Baba's face in the window. First she looked to see if he was safe and sound, and then she saw that he still had his new mitten. And there he is. And so, boys and girls, there were some words in there that we were going to talk about, like we always do. And the first one I said was foreshadowing. And I don't know if you noticed, but when I was reading the story, Jan Brett has pictures along the sides of the book. And in each one of those pictures, she tells us the animal that's going to be going into the mitten next. And that's an example of something called foreshadowing, when we find out what's going to happen in the story before it happens. One of the other words, did you hear some of the words? One was jostled. When they were all going into the mitten, they were jostled, and that means to kind of bump around and move around to make more room. So we have foreshadowing and jostled as some of our vocabulary words for this book. So I hope that you enjoyed The Mitten by Jan Brett, a Ukrainian folktale that was illustrated and adapted by Jan Brett. She didn't make it up. She just kind of made this beautiful book up about it. And if we like the stories of Jan Brett, and we like to look at her illustrations. She does a lot of books about the hedgehog called Hedgie. We can go to our school libraries and we can check those books out. We can either look for the author, Jan Brett, if we wanted to see all of the works by Jan Brett. And if you want to check out The Mitten, you know that you can look by the author or the title or the subject, which would be The Mitten and Jan Brett. So last time on Library Corner, we talked about Destiny, the library catalog, the online public access catalog. And this time, when we talked about how to find books through all of the Erie Public Schools. This time I want to show you some other features that we have through Destiny, and one of them is the Follett Shelf. And the Follett Shelf is our online bookshelf. And so just like at Blasco Library, the district library for the Erie County Public Library System, we have an online catalog and we have an online bookshelf as well in the Erie Public Schools. And it's free to every student who goes to the Erie Public Schools. And so to get to it, all you have to do is go to the Erie School District homepage, which is www.eriesd.org, and we are going to click on the student tab, and we're going to go down and we're going to click on Follett Destiny, the district library catalog. And there's a reason why we're going to do that. So when we go in here, we see all of our schools, and you have to go to the school that you are attending. So if you go to Wayne School or Edison or Strong Vincent, that's where you have to log in. You have to log in at your school. And so we're going to go to that school and we're going to log in. And we're going to go to the catalog. And when we're at the catalog, we can search for books, but on the left-hand side of the screen, there are a number of tabs that we can click on. And at the very bottom is the Follett Shelf. And once you have logged in, your name will be in the upper right-hand corner, and your name will be right there. And we're going to click on Follett Shelf. And it's going to take us to the online bookshelf. And the first time you log in, you have to log in at school and you have to go through the steps just like I'm telling you. And then you will notice when we click on the Follett Shelf, your name is also in the upper right-hand corner of the computer screen. And in front of you, you will see all of the books that we have at your school that are available. Some schools have more titles than others because at the high school level, we offer all of the books that we have on the Follett Shelf. And at the elementary level, we offer usually around 800 to 900 books, and that's because not all books are appropriate for every student at the elementary level. And so when we see the Follett Shelf, we see that we have three ways we can display the books, either A to Z, Z to A, or what we have most recently added to the shelf. And most recent is usually the default. And so all you have to do, you can download the app for an iPad, and you can see these books anywhere. If you can get to the internet, if you have a phone, if you have an iPad, if you have a computer, if you have a laptop, you can get in and you can read the books online. And so we have, as I showed you, we have 966 at Harding School. That's where I logged in. And we have 966 books there. And you can either just look at what we have available, or we can go over here and we can search by availability, author, subject, or genre. And the reason I'm going to talk about genre, we know about author, we know about subject, but genre is kind of different. It's kind of like what kind of book it is. And when I was reading The Mitten to you earlier, I said that it was a Ukrainian folk tale adapted by Jan Brett. And so if we went down here and wanted to read more folk tales, we could look at, there's a folklore section to the Follett Shelf, and we can click on folklore, and we can see that we have 7 books there. We have the Brementown Musicians, we have Fandango Stew, we have Henny Penny, the Little Red Hen, Love and Roast Chicken, which is a Peruvian folk tale, and The People of Corn, which is a Mexican Mayan story, and The Three Little Pigs. And so to read any of these books, if we wanted to read one, any of the books on the shelf, we just find the book and we click on it, and it opens. And when it opens, it's going to tell us that this book is not checked out. And you as the student have the choice to check this book out if you don't want to. And I say, okay, it's not checked out. And so I can click on checkout, or I can just click on X and read the story. And so I have clicked on Fandango Stew, and I'm going to look at Fandango Stew. There are a lot of things on the page that are helpful for us for reading the books. And one of them is in the lower right-hand corner. There's a uppercase A and a lowercase a. And we're going to click on that. And we're going to tell this that we only want to see one page at a time. And we want to adjust it for height. And then we're going to click on the X. And we can, from this page, we can take notes and we can put in what page we want. We can navigate through the book either through here. But I'm going to click in the middle of the page, and I'm just going to use the arrows to go through the book. And if you are some of the boys and girls in the schools that I have been to lately, we all know the story of Fandango Stew. And maybe we could read that together the next time that we have Library Corner. But this sort of adjusts the book. You can see now, we can see the whole page and we can see the whole cover. And so we've adjusted the book using that button in the lower right-hand corner. And if I need to get back to that button, I'm just going to click in the middle of the page, and all of my buttons come back. There's a dictionary button, there's a search button, there's a dictionary button. If we are in Fandango Stew, and we don't understand what one of the words is, we can highlight the word. We can highlight the word, and it will give us a dictionary, and we can find out what Mustangs mean. And Mustang is a horse. Now we may know what Mustang means when we're reading a picture book. We don't always know what words are when we're reading the nonfiction books that are available on the shelf. And so if we wanted to leave this book and go look at another one, we would click up here on the Follett Shelf, and it says, do you want to check it out or close the title? I want to close the title. And then it'll close this out, and it will take us back to the Follett Shelf. And from there, you can see we are back to where we started from, and it tells us what book that we've recently read. If we had checked the book out, it would go right into our book bag, and you can have that book for 2 weeks, and then you don't even have to remember to return the book to the library. It will just take it right back from you if you are not reading it. And if a book is out, you will be able to see that there's a red flag over that book that says that the book is out. And so Junie B. First Grader is out, and Junie B. First Grader Turkey Thanksgiving book is out. So we have a lot of stuff on the shelf, and I encourage you to take advantage of these awesome books that we have. And again, they're all free to all of you, the students in the Erie School District. Hi everyone, I wanted to talk to you about a few books. I read a number of books over Christmas vacation, trying to get everything in my living room read. And one of the books that I read was very interesting. It was it was a companion to the book that I'm holding up, Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. And Anne Frank is a book that can be read by kids in grades 6 through 12. It's a very, very good book. It's one of the most widely read books in the world. Anne is a young girl whose father had a business in Germany. He was Otto Frank, and he was a banker. And in the 1930s, the Germans put sanctions on the Jewish people, and I don't know if you know anything about the Holocaust, but the Germans put sanctions on the Jewish people, and when Hitler came to power, Jewish children couldn't go to school, Jewish people couldn't own land, they could not go to parks, they could not go in public swimming pools, they could not ride on public transportation. And so Mr. Frank moved his family from Germany to the Netherlands. And the Netherlands were very, very, very resistant to the Germans. And when Mr. Frank had his business there, a few of the people, 3 of the people who worked for him, said that they would hide him and his family, which was his wife and Anne and her sister Margot. And they also said that they would hide Mr. Frank's business partner, Mr. Van Pels, and his wife and their son Peter. And so the 7 people in July of 1942 went into the annex and didn't come out for 2 years. And it doesn't sound like it would be a very hard thing to do if you had TV, but you have to remember, there was no TV, there were no video games, they couldn't wear shoes because they couldn't make any noise, they couldn't talk loudly, they couldn't do anything because Mr. Frank's business, there were people who didn't know about them and who would turn them in because the Nazis eventually did invade the Netherlands. And the Dutch resistance was really something to a force to be reckoned with, but they were really not as good as the Nazis at that point. And the Franks lived in the annex for 2 long years. And then someone in the company, not one of his 3 very close friends, eventually did kind of rat them out, and they were taken away. But while they were in there, Anne kept a diary, and she called her diary Kitty, and she wrote in it every day. And she wrote about the people in the annex and about what was going on in the Netherlands at that time. And it's a very, very, very good book. A lot of people have read it. But this is the book that I read over Christmas vacation, and this is a fiction book. This is Anne Frank's diary is a true book. It's a biography. It's in the nonfiction section. And this book that I read is a fictionalized, it goes with Anne Frank's diary, but this is written from the perspective of Peter, who eventually fell in love with Anne. And this is not a grade 6 through 12 book. This is a grade 9 through 12 book. And it tells about what really he thought about Anne. And Anne was kind of precocious, and not everybody liked her. And so imagine being 2 years in in 2 rooms, really, with a girl that you didn't really like. So this was also a very, very good story, very interesting, and follows along what happened with the people. I'm not really going to be giving anything away in the story when I tell you that the Germans, when they captured the Franks and when they took them to concentration camps. And this was in August of 1944. And the war was over in June of 1945, so 10 months later. And no one survived who lived in the annex except Mr. Frank. He was the only survivor, and when he got out, I also have a couple of other books, but they're about Anne, and it's about Beyond the Diary. But when Mr. Frank got out, one of the 3 people that were helping the Franks stay hidden, Miep Gies, Mr. Frank went back to the Netherlands, and she said, I kept Anne's diary. And they took it to a publisher, and he really didn't want, the first time they took it to a publisher, they really weren't interested in publishing it. So they took it to another publisher. And the King of the Netherlands had said to all of the people in a secret radio broadcast, please take notes, please make diaries of what's happening to you so that we can always have a record. Because that's the most important thing, that we always have a record so that people never forget. And so Mr. Frank got her diary published, and when Eleanor Roosevelt read the diary, she thought that it was amazing. And then children in France and England and Belgium and the Netherlands and all over the world started reading it. People all over the world started reading it, and it became the most published book in the world today, The Diary of Anne Frank. And you can go to the Netherlands and you can visit the house where Anne Frank lived and the annex, and you can see the secret bookshelf where they opened the bookshelf and it hid the doorway. And so I also have in all of our libraries, and we were talking about using the Destiny Card Catalog, if you search your keyword or your subject is Anne Frank, you will find a number of books. I just pulled these four off the shelf. Usually most of the materials on Anne Frank are nonfiction, but I thought that this was a really nice addition, a fictionalized addition to our collection because it told the perspective of Peter. So if you have any interest in these books, students of the Erie School District, you can look at these. You can look for these books in our card catalog. You can request them from other schools, and I hope that you will find some interest in these books that I talked to you about today about Anne Frank. Thanks, and I'll see you next time at the Library Corner.